Krishna.
Good evening, everyone. Hare Krishna. So we're just going to do our reading for the next half an hour. I'd like to start by offering this reading to my uncle. I mentioned him a couple of readings ago, and he was not so well. He was in hospital. We requested prayers for everyone. So he did kind of recover enough to leave the hospital, and then he went into hospice. But he has, unfortunately, or fortunately, one might say, he has given up his body. He's left. He departed in the early hours of this morning, I believe. So please, if you can offer a prayer for my Uncle Larry Barnhart, then that'd be greatly appreciated. So we'll dedicate our reading this evening to his forward journey and safe passage, and pray that Lord Krishna looks after him. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So we're going to be reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter
4.
Entitled
The Appearance of Sri Narada.
Text number
13.
Okay, so we'll start with the invocation. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Text 13. We know that you are expert in the meaning of all subjects except some portions of the Vedas, and thus you can clearly explain the answers to all the questions we have just put to you. Purport. The difference between the Vedas and the Puranas is like that between the Brahmanas and the
Parivrajakas.
The Brahmanas are meant to administer some fruitive sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas, but the Parivrajakacharyas, or learned preachers, are meant to disseminate transcendental knowledge to one and all. As such, the Parivrajakacharyas are not always expert in pronouncing the Vedic mantras, which are practiced systematically by accent and meter by the Brahmanas, who are meant for administrating Vedic rites. Yet it should not be considered that the Brahmanas are more important than the itinerant preachers. They are one and different simultaneously, because they are meant for the same end in different ways.
There is no difference. There is no difference also between the Vedic mantras and what is explained in the Puranas and Itihasas. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, it is mentioned in the Madhyandina Shruti that all the Vedas, namely the Sama, Atharva, Rig, Yajur, Puranas, Itihasas, Upanishads, etc., are emanations from the breathing of the Supreme Being. The only difference is that the Vedic mantras are mostly begun with pranava omkar, Om, Hari, Om, and it requires some training to practice the metric pronunciation of the Vedic mantras. But that does not mean the Srimad Bhagavatam is of less importance than the Vedic mantras. On the contrary, it is the ripened fruit of all the Vedas, as stated before. Besides that, the most perfectly liberated soul, Srila Shukadeva Goswami, is absorbed in the studies of the Bhagavatam, although he is already self-realized. Srila Sutta Goswami is following his footsteps, and therefore his position, is not the least less important, because he was not expert in chanting Vedic mantras with metric pronunciation, which depends more on practice than actual realization. Realization is more important than parrot-like chanting.
Text 14. Sutta Goswami said, when the second millennium overlapped the third, the great sage Vyasadeva was born to Parashara in the womb of Satyavati, the daughter of Vasu. There is a chronological order of the 4 millenniums, namely Satya, Dwapara, Treta, and Kali, but sometimes there is overlapping. During the regime of Vaivasvata Manu, there was an overlapping of the there was an overlapping of the 28th round of the 4 millenniums, and the 3rd millennium appeared prior to the 2nd. In that particular millennium, Lord Sri Krishna also descends, and because of this there was some particular alteration. The mother of the great sage was Satyavati, the daughter of the Vasu, fisherman, and the father was the great Parashara Muni. That is the history of Vyasadev's birth. Every millennium is divided into 3 periods, and each period is called a Sandhya. Vyasadeva appeared in the 3rd Sandhya of that particular age.
This is an interesting point, because often we say that there's Satya Yuga, then we say Treta Yuga, then we say Dwarpa Yuga, and then we say Kali Yuga. But it's not like that usually. It's only in this age when Krishna appears. Otherwise, Dwarpa means 2, so that's 2nd, and Treta means 3. So like that, it should be Satya Yuga, Dwarpa Yuga, Treta Yuga, and Kali Yuga. But in this age, it actually gets swapped. It doesn't say exactly why, it just says that sometimes these things happen. So I guess sometimes things happen. Text 15 of the 4th chapter. Once upon a time, he, Vyasadeva, as the sun rose, took his morning ablution in the waters of the Saraswati and sat alone to concentrate. Purport. The river Saraswati is flowing in the Badrik Ashram area of the Himalayas. So the place indicated here is Shamaprasya in Badrik Ashram, where Sri Vyasadeva is residing.
Hare Krishna, Chiturapini Mataji. Hare Text 16. The great sage Vyasadeva saw anomalies in the duties of the millennium. This happens on the earth in different ages due to unseen forces in the course of time. Purport. The great sages like Vyasadeva are liberated souls, and therefore they can see clearly past and future. Thus he could see the future anomalies in the Kali age, and accordingly he made arrangement for the people in general so that they can execute a progressive life in this age, which is full of darkness. The people in general in this age of Kali are too much interested in matter which is temporary. Because of ignorance, they are unable to evaluate the assets of life and be enlightened in spiritual knowledge.
Okay, so text number 17 and 18 of the 4th chapter of the 1st canto of Bhagavatam. The great sage who was fully equipped in knowledge could see through his transcendental vision the deterioration of everything material due to the influence of the age. He could see that the faithless people in general would be reduced in duration of life and would be impatient due to lack of goodness. Thus he contemplated for the welfare of men in all statuses and orders of life. Purport. The unmanifested forces of time are so powerful that they reduce all matter to oblivion in due course. In Kali Yuga, the last millennium of a round of 4 millenniums, the power of all material objects deteriorates by the influence of time. In this age, the duration of the material body of people in general is much reduced, and so is the memory. The action of matter has also not so much incentive. The land does not produce food grains in the same proportions as it did in other ages. The cow does not give as much milk as it used to and used to give formerly. The production of vegetables and fruits is less than before. As such, all living beings, both men and animals, do not have sumptuous, nourishing food. Due to want of so many necessities of life, naturally the duration of life is reduced. The memory is short, intelligence is meager, mutual dealings are full of hypocrisy, and so on.
The great sage Vyasadeva could see this by his transcendental vision. As an astrologer can see the future fate of a man, when astronomer can foretell the solar and lunar eclipses, those liberated souls who can see through the scriptures can foretell the future of all mankind. They can see this due to their sharp vision of spiritual attainment.
And all such transcendentalists who are naturally devotees of the Lord are always eager to render welfare service to the people in general. They are the real friends of the people in general, not the so-called public leaders who are unable to see what is going to happen 5 minutes ahead. In this age, the people in general, as well as their so-called leaders, are all unlucky fellows, faithless in spiritual knowledge and influenced by the age of Kali. They are always disturbed by various diseases. For example, in the present age, there are so many TB patients and TB hospitals, but formerly this was not so because the time was not so unfavorable. The unfortunate men of this age are always reluctant to give a reception to the transcendentalists who are representatives of Srila Vyasadeva, and selfless workers always busy in planning something which may help everyone in all statuses and orders of life. The greatest philanthropists are those transcendentalists who represent the mission of Vyas, Narada, Madhva, Chaitanya, Rupa, Saraswati, etc. They are all one and the same. The personalities may be different, but the aim of the mission is one and the same, namely, to deliver the fallen souls back home, back to Godhead.
Text 19. He saw that the sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas were means by which the people's occupations could be purified. And to simplify the process, he divided the one Veda into 4, in order to expand them among men. Purport. Formerly there was only the Veda of the name Yaja, and the 4 divisions of sacrifices were there specifically mentioned, but to make them more easily performable, the Veda was divided into 4 divisions of sacrifice, just to purify the occupational service of the 4 orders. Above the 4 Vedas, namely Rig, Yajur, Sama and Atharva, there are the Puranas, the Mahabharata, Samhitas, etc., which are known as the 5th Veda. Sri Vyasadeva and his many disciples were all historical personalities, and they were very kind and sympathetic toward the fallen souls of this age. As such, the Puranas and Mahabharata were made from related historical facts, which explain the teaching of the 4 Vedas. There is no point in doubting the authority of the Puranas and Mahabharata as parts and parcels of the Vedas. In the Chandogya Upanishad, the Puranas and Mahabharata, generally known as histories, are mentioned as the 5th Veda. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, that is a way of ascertaining the respective values of the revealed scriptures.
Nice point. Text 20. The 4 divisions of the original sources of knowledge, the Vedas, were made separately, but the historical facts and authentic stories mentioned in the Puranas are called the 5th Veda. After the Vedas were divided into 4 divisions, Paila Rishi became the professor of the Rig Veda, Jaimini the professor of the Sama Veda, and Vaishampayana alone became glorified by the Yajur Veda. Purport. The different Vedas were entrusted to different learned scholars for development in various ways. Should I keep reading? Okay. So text 22. The Sumantu Muni Angira, who was very devotedly engaged, was entrusted with the Atharva Veda, and my father, Romaharshan, was entrusted with the Puranas and historical records. Purport. In the Shruti mantras also it is stated that Angira Muni, who strictly followed the rigid principles of the Atharva Veda, was the leader of the followers of the Atharva Veda.
Text 23. All these learned scholars in their turn rendered their entrusted Vedas unto their many disciples, grand disciples, and great grand disciples, and thus the respective branches of the followers of the Vedas came into being. Purport. The original source of knowledge is the Vedas. There are no branches of knowledge, either mundane or transcendental, which do not belong to the original text of the Vedas. They have simply been developed into different branches. They were originally rendered by great, respectable, and learned professors. In other words, the Vedic knowledge, broken into different branches by different disciplic successions, has been distributed all over the world. No one, therefore, can claim independent knowledge beyond the Vedas. Hare Krishna, Vaisheshika Prabhu.
Whoa.
Hari Bo.
Hari.
We're just trying to follow in your footsteps.
Vaisheshika Prabhu King.
Jai.
So text 24 of the 4th chapter of the 1st canto. Thus, the great sage Vyasadeva, who is very kind to the ignorant masses, edited the Vedas so that they might be assimilated by less intellectual men, like myself. Purport. The Veda is one, and the reasons for its division in many parts are explained herewith. The seed of all knowledge, or the Veda, is not a subject matter which can easily be understood by any ordinary man. There is a stricture that no one should try to learn the Vedas who is not a qualified Brahmana. This stricture has been wrongly interpreted in so many ways. A class of men who claim Brahminical qualification simply by their birthright in the family of a Brahmana claim that the study of the Vedas is a monopoly of the Brahmin caste only. Another section of the people take this as an injustice to members of other castes who do not happen to take birth in a Brahmin family. But both of them are misguided. The Vedas are subjects which had to be explained even to Brahmaji by the Supreme Lord. Therefore, the subject matter is understood by persons with exceptional qualities of goodness. Persons who are in a mode of passion and ignorance are unable to understand the subject matter of the Vedas. The ultimate goal of Vedic knowledge is Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. This personality is very rarely understood by those who are in the modes of passion and ignorance. In the Satya Yuga, everyone was situated in the mode of goodness. Gradually, the mode of goodness declined during the Treta and Dwapara Yugas, and the general mass of people became corrupt. In the present age, the mode of goodness is almost nil. And so, for the general mass of people, the kind-hearted, powerful sage Srila Vyasadeva divided the Vedas in various ways so that they may be practically followed by the less intelligent persons in the mode of passion and ignorance. It is explained in the next shloka as follows.
Text 25. Out of compassion, the great sage thought it wise that this would enable men to achieve the ultimate goal of life. Thus he compiled the great historical narration called the Mahabharata for women, labourers, and friends of the twice-born. Purport. The friends of the twice-born families are those who are born in the families of Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, or the spiritually cultured families, but who themselves are not equal to their forefathers. Such descendants are not recognized as such for want of purificatory achievements. The purificatory activities begin even before the birth of a child, and the seed-giving reformatory process is called Garbhodana Samskara. One who has not undergone such Garbhodana Samskara or spiritual family planning is not accepted as being of an actual twice-born family. The Garbhodana Samskara is followed by other purificatory processes, out of which the sacred thread ceremony is one. This is performed at the time of spiritual initiation. After this particular samskara, one is rightly called twice born. One birth is calculated during the seed-giving samskara, and the second birth is calculated at the time of spiritual initiation. One who has been able to undergo such important samskaras can be called a bona fide twice born.
If the father and mother do not undertake the process of spiritual family planning and simply beget children out of passion only, their children are called Dvija Bandhus. These Dvija Bandhus are certainly not as intelligent as the children of the regular twice-born families. The Dvija Bandhus are classified with the Shudras and the women class, who are by nature less intelligent. The Shudras and the women class do not have to undergo any samskara save and except the ceremony of marriage.
The less intelligent classes of men, namely women, Shudras, and unqualified sons of the higher caste, are devoid of unnecessary qualifications.
Devoid of necessary. Devoid
Oh.
of necessary.
Yeah, devoid of necessary qualifications to understand the purpose of the transcendental Vedas. For them, the Mahabharata was prepared. The purpose of the Mahabharata is to administer the purpose of the Vedas, and therefore within this Mahabharata, the summary Veda of Bhagavad Gita is placed. The less intelligent are more interested in stories than in philosophy, and therefore the philosophy of the Vedas in the form of the Bhagavad Gita is spoken by the Lord Sri Krishna. Vyasadeva and Lord Krishna are both on the transcendental plane, and therefore they collaborated in doing good to the fallen souls of this age. The Bhagavad Gita is the essence of all Vedic knowledge. It is the first book of spiritual values, as the Upanishads are. The Vedanta philosophy is the subject matter for study by the spiritual graduates. Only the postgraduate spiritual student can enter into the spiritual or devotional service of the Lord. It is a great science, and the great professor is the Lord himself, in the form of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And persons who are empowered by him can initiate others in the transcendental loving service of the Lord.
Yeah. Text 26. O twice-born Brahmanas, still his mind was not satisfied, although he engaged himself in working for the total welfare of all people. Purport. Srila Vyasadeva was not satisfied with himself, although he had prepared literatures of Vedic value for the all-around welfare of the general mass of people. It was expected that he would be satisfied by all such activities, but ultimately he was not satisfied.
Text 27. Thus the sage, being dissatisfied at heart, at once began to reflect, because he knew the essence of religion, and he said within himself, Purport. The sage began to search out the cause of not being satisfied at heart. Perfection is never attained until one is satisfied at heart. This satisfaction of heart has to be searched out beyond matter.
Text 28 and 29. I have under strict disciplinary vows unpretentiously worshipped the Vedas, the spiritual masters, and the altar of sacrifice. I have also abided by the rulings and have shown the import of disciplic succession through the explanation of the Mahabharata, by which even women, Shudras, and others, friends of the twice-borns, can see the path of religion. Purport. No one can understand the import of the Vedas without having undergone a strict disciplinary vow and disciplic succession. The Vedas, spiritual masters, and sacrificial fire must be worshipped by the desiring candidate. All these intricacies of Vedic knowledge are systematically presented in the Mahabharata for the understanding of the women class, the laborer class, and the unqualified members of Brahmin, Kshatriya, and Vaishya families. In this age, the Mahabharata is more essential than the original Vedas.
Text 30. I am feeling incomplete, though I myself am fully equipped with everything required by the Vedas. Purport. Undoubtedly, Srila Vyasadeva was complete in all the details of Vedic achievements. Purification of the living being submerged in matter is made possible by the prescribed activities in the Vedas, but the ultimate achievement is different. Unless it is attained, the living being, even though fully equipped, cannot be situated in the transcendentally normal stage. Srila Vyasadeva appeared to have lost the clue and therefore felt dissatisfaction.
Text 31. This may be because I did not specifically point out the devotional service of the Lord, which is dear both to perfect beings and to the infallible Lord. Purport. The dissatisfaction which was being felt by Srila Vyasadeva is expressed herein in his own words. This was felt for the normal condition of the living being in devotional service of the Lord. I'll read that again because that didn't make sense. This was felt for the normal condition of the living being in the devotional service of the Lord. Unless one is fixed in the normal condition of service, neither the Lord nor the living being can become fully satisfied. This defect was felt by him when Narada Muni, his spiritual master, reached him. It is described as follows.
Text 32. As mentioned before, Narada reached the cottage of Krishna Dwapaya Vyasadeva on the banks of the Saraswati, just as Vyasadeva was regretting his defects. Purport. The vacuum felt by Vyasadeva was not due to his lack of knowledge. Bhagavat Dharma is purely devotional service of the Lord, to which the monist has no access. The monist is not counted amongst the Paramahamsas, the most perfect of the renounced order of life. Srimad Bhagavatam is full of narrations of the transcendental activities of the personality of Godhead. Although Vyasadeva was an empowered divinity, he still felt dissatisfaction because in none of his works were the transcendental activities of the Lord properly explained. The inspiration was infused by Sri Krishna directly in the heart of Vyasadeva, and thus he felt the vacuum as explained above. It is definitely expressed herein that without the transcendental loving service of the Lord, everything is void. But in the transcendental service of the Lord, everything is tangible without any separate attempt at fruitive work or empiric philosophical speculation.
Okay. And then we have the last verse, and I guess this will conclude our reading. So this is text 33 of the 4th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, and the final verse of this chapter. At the auspicious arrival of Sri Narad, Sri Vyasadeva got up respectfully and worshipped him, giving him veneration equal to that given to Brahmaji, the creator. Purport. Vidhi means Brahma, the first created living being. He is the original student as well as professor of the Vedas. He learned it from Sri Krishna and taught Narada first. So Narada is the second Acharya in the line of spiritual disciplic succession. He is the representative of Brahma, and therefore he is respected exactly like Brahma, the father of all vidhis, regulations. Similarly, all other successive disciples in the chain are also equally respected as representatives of the original spiritual master. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the first canto, 4th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Appearance of Sri Narada. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki.
Yay.
So we hope you all were able to relish a little bit of the reading of the Bhagavatam. And once again, we'll end requesting devotees to please offer a prayer for my uncle, Larry Barnhart. He passed away in the early hours of the morning. And so we can ask Krishna to please look after him and assist him on his forward journey. Like that, by the mercy of Vaishnavas, anything is possible. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Srila
Krishna.
Prabhupada ki.
Jai.